David, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
So Weight Watchers is a well-known brand, but people may not really understand the breadth of the company's services and its go-to-market strategy. So can you please fill us in?
Yeah, Weight Watchers is a global heritage brand. We've been around for over 60 years. I'd say, we were one of the first female-founded startups. And we've always been about the power of community in helping our members achieve healthy weight. We have a combination of in real life experiences, virtual events, digital, and of course, digital experiences. I think probably for the longest time, the thing that people most associated with Weight Watchers was the meeting format. But we've, in the last decades, built a robust digital ecosystem where actually the vast majority of member interactions happen with us. And, the fun for folks like me and my team is that generates a lot of data. We've always been science-backed. Science has changed. So have we, and we've been expanding into being able to help people achieve a healthy weight through medical treatments. And so we've completed an acquisition of a company, Weekend Health, and have launched our WW clinic in the last year or so.
Yeah. And remind me, do you sell food?
We do not.
Okay.
It is one of the most common misperceptions.
Yeah.
Is everyone sees Weight Watchers and is like, oh, you guys are the food company. You guys have those frozen meals. It's like, no, we don't. At one point in the late 90s, early 2000s, Heinz was involved with us. And I think that's where a lot of that came from. But we have not had those for a long time.
So it sounds like you've been on this digital journey for quite a while. I understand that the company is going through a bit of a transition now. So what's going on? From what to what?
I would say there's always a transition. I joined about 4 years ago. I think I've been through 3 transitions with Weight Watchers in the last 4 years. We were very much this heritage TV big brand advertiser when I got here. We worked with numerous agencies across the world, but the majority of our marketing spend was television. And we've seen that over the course of the last several years move to a more performance, more measured, more digital first approach. COVID saw our transition from in real life to a more virtual footprint. And then I think more recently, the launching of GLP-1s has seen, or I guess the more mainstreaming of GLP-1s, has seen this new movement from, everything is behavioral no matter what, to the notion that there's a biological component to weight and the health that goes along with weight, and how do we show up right for our members who need that extra support.
Yeah. GLP-1s, I'm not sure everybody will know what that is.
Oh, yeah. GLP-1s are a relatively new class of drugs. Wegovy, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, they came into existence around treating diabetes, and turned out a side effect of those diabetes treatments was weight loss.
So I imagine a lot of your members are also taking these new GLP-1s.
I would say we have a fair number of members taking them, but I think it is still it is not the majority. It is not it is still a nascent thing. You're seeing hundreds of thousands of people in the country taking them or hundreds of thousands of prescriptions being written any week for these kinds of meds. So our member base is on the order of magnitude of 4 million. And so when you consider that in context of this growing thing, is it a growing population? Yes. Is it the common? No, we're still, yeah.
Now, you said before you arrived at Weight Watchers about 4 years ago, and there've been like three transitions since. Give us a sense of how you fit into that. Kind of what was your brief when you came, and what have you been doing since then? Have you shifted strategy since, or have you kind of been on a straight line in terms of digital strategy and
I
data?
think my brief when I came in was a lot narrower. I was kind of brought in to specifically start working on analytics,
Mm,
and try to get that team and try think through how are we going to use more analytics. But I think as we started digging into that, it wasn't but a couple months before like hitting little things that were not so little. And so my scope started growing relatively quickly. One of the first things someone asked me was like, maybe you can help us with this, but I have product telling us that it takes 10 weeks to launch an A B test. I'm like, well, that seems wrong and incongruous with anything I've ever seen at any other company.
yeah, yeah. So silos of data is a problem, but it's kind of silos of information where people are cut off from getting context. Hobbles an organization, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Now, it sounds like the big transition you guys are on is to really becoming a data-driven organization. What does that mean to you, and especially in the context of Weight Watchers?
So we have tried, I think we have tried not to be data driven. We've tried to be
Oh,
data
really?
informed. And
Oh,
I think that I think that nuance is important. And I think that if you go to a lot of places, they'll say they want to be data driven, and you get to meetings and people can't make decisions because they're waiting for the data to say, to like show them the pathway forward.
hmm,
And we should be informed by data. We shouldn't be making decisions in a vacuum, and we shouldn't be making them purely on gut. Absolutely. But like, we have autonomy in these decisions. We own them. And to give up our agency to data and allows people to like push off those decisions and not really own them and just be like, the data said.
hmm.
The data should be part of that decision, and the data should inform those decisions, help us figure out trade-offs. But data's never going to remove
Yeah,
uncertainty entirely.
yeah, yeah. I love that distinction that you've made, and it kind of goes to our moment, the AI moment. Are you going to give up? Are you going to be an AI driven company? You know, I think not. Maybe
Yeah.
AI informed. Yeah. Interesting. Hey, I want to kind of talk about a little bit into your past. Now, you worked previously
Yep.
at Aptiv, Chief Data Officer, SVP of Growth, other tech companies before that in data engineering. You're a pretty technical guy. So what lessons did you learn at those places that you're putting to use now at Weight Watchers?
Get some early wins. It is hard when you come into an organization that maybe isn't where you want it to be, for people to fully appreciate a vision, no matter how much you write, no matter how much you talk. And I love to talk, but any of that is not going to like really do it until you can sit down and deliver something. And so finding those early things that you can deliver and actually make your stakeholders and your partners better at their jobs is the thing that's going to let you take on more and more and actually move through the org. You need to build those uh, you need to build those partnerships. And so, yeah, I think like that
I see
was,
that. I see that you're building credibility and trust.
yes.
Yeah. Now, when and why did Weight Watchers start adopting Snowflake technology?
So, Weight Watchers started adopting Snowflake when that was something that I started
Oh,
relatively soon after I kind of got here. As that mandate kind of grew a little bit, as I mentioned, we noticed that and people are being told don't write queries. It's too expensive. Don't update the data warehouse more than X frequency. It's too expensive. And these are all problems that I've never had.
Yeah.
I was a very early Snowflake customer. I think 2017 maybe was the first time I wound up using it. I definitely broken a few things in the early days at Snowflake. And so when I got here, it's like all of this felt like problems that I shouldn't be dealing with in 2022 at the time. And so we kind of started talking to people about, could we think about doing this a different way? My data science team had literally an entire repository of code that was just meant to download bulk results from the prior data warehouse, that when we plugged in Snowflake's SDK was faster and more reliable and was one line instead of 1,000, thousands of lines of code.
Yeah. Interesting. So you started off, your brief was data analytics. It spread to basically data management, and you re-platformed.
Yes.
It sounds like, yeah.
Yes.
So how have you been using, I mean, you talked about some of the attributes that are so valuable to you, but what kind of applications have you been using Snowflake for? What kind of results have you been getting?
I'd say the biggest thing that we wound up doing was the approach we took was one thing I inherited that was amazing was every piece of data that goes through Weight Watchers goes through Kafka and all has schemas attached to it, which was just a huge blessing. And we were able to orchestrate something such that anything in any Kafka was automatically persisted into its own set of tables in Snowflake. This meant was like within a week of finalizing our sequence acquisition, our Weekend Health, the entirety of their data was in Snowflake.
Yeah.
And so while we were spending, integrations with an acquisition are not easy, we had data from almost day one and were able to start making decisions with them and running the business together, like immediately, as opposed to this like Chinese wall that frequently can exist. I'd say that was probably one of the biggest wins we've had.
Interesting. As the company made the transition from the focus on TV ads, much harder to tell what impact you're having, to digital, you just get so granular, so much knowledge.
And then, once TV was a smaller portion, there are ways to measure that too. And so, so we have a very large majority of our media spend being able to be measured within a couple days of actually happening. Some of it takes a little longer, but we are able to kind of have a full view of our returns across, a dozen or so countries, across a dozen or so channels, across 100 vendors, and be able to see what media, what creative is working, what messages are working.
Oh, interesting.
And so like everything we've done has probably been paid for by the efficiency gains we've seen through that.
Yeah. I'm recalling, I think it was John Wanamaker, the 19th century or early 20th century retailer, who said half of our spend on advertising is wasted. We don't know which half. That was an incredible insight for the time, but of course now there's no excuse for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing is perfect. To our prior, there are so many ways to measure marketing. All of those models are wrong, but some of them are useful.
Yeah.
That's the other statement about that, right? Interesting, not useful. So, I think we've had. Is everything like gospel? No, but one of the things we focused really on is finding partners that we could work with that would provide us with actionable data. There are a lot of partners that will give you tell you we can do all of this amazing stuff. It's going to be a couple weeks for every time we need a measurement though. And that just doesn't work anymore. And so we really focused on companies that were actionable and as close to real time. Because if we got into these multi-week and multi-month cycles of measurement, by
Yeah.
the time we had data, it wasn't useful anymore.
Right. Right. I mentioned AI a minute ago, kind of derisively.
Yep.
Uh, but here we are, a year and a half into a revolution with large language models and generative AI. And I understand that you have been deploying some large language models, particularly in marketing. So tell us what you're doing there.
We're starting to experiment with them with some of our customer service
Mm.
applications. We've also have a very large food catalog. And I think one of
Oh,
the things that becomes a challenge with food catalogs are things like how are these different foods related to each other? What foods are made up of what other foods? And that kind of taxonomy we've had is one of the places we've started to work LLMs into our process. And they've been particularly good at trying to find relationships there.
so um, it's been a busy year, busy couple of years in technology. Maybe they all are. I don't know. But looking out over the next year or so, what are the big trends in data management and data analytics that people should be watching closely?
Where I do think particularly LLMs are going to start playing, I think you're going to see uh, a better first tier of self-service. I think self-service is always tricky. Everyone dreams of a world where they're going to be able to ask a novel question and something's going to answer it.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that coming for organizations that have thousands and thousands of tables, but I do think like generative AI is going to find its way in, and people are already starting to explore with data there. I think as costs inevitably come down, which is what I've seen, and as more features get built into this, you're going to see people explore things that they couldn't have before. I think that Snowflake continues to make it easier for us to ask questions that we
Yeah.
wouldn't have asked in the past. And that means we get to go innovate and do things that we wouldn't have done before just because it
Yeah.
was too hard. Whether it's the sequelization of LLMs, of programming, many of these things that were, restricted to who in the org could do them based on skill sets they have
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
being brought down to like a SQL layer that most analysts can kind of understand.
So it's like first step is SQL query language. Next step in the future is just common language.
Yeah.
Yeah. But who knows how far? I mean, I spent half an hour today on a chatbot for an airline. I won't say the name, and it couldn't answer the simplest question. And I kept saying to myself, "I'm trying to think how this thing thinks." So I can, because it kept asking me, could you ask in a different way? I tried all these different ways. You definitely don't want to have a comma, because that's going to throw it off. So, but anyway, I mean, I'm a believer. I think there are going to be great capabilities, but right now, some of it's just kind of silly when you think about it, when you
Yeah.
experience it. Yeah.
I think the other thing that I'm seeing for what it's worth is like, I feel like data warehouses and the particularly
Yeah.
relevant to Snowflake were very much, to your point, were very much the like role of that data team or that BI team. And you had like engineering running on one platform set of platforms, and then you had your data team. And I think more over the last couple of years, and I think it's going to only accelerate, people I know are starting to see their data warehouse as part of their production environment. They're no
Mhm.
longer worried about its uptime. It's in the cloud. They're no longer worried about, it can scale. So they're no longer worried about not knowing exactly who's using it at any time. And so more and more I see projects, that sharing of that single data
Yeah. Yeah.
source across
Yeah.
the organization.
Now, I'm going to ask you to put on your visionary cap for a minute. Looking out 5 years or more, how do you see data analytics and data management helping to transform business, the economy, or even society as a whole? It's a big question.
I'm gonna stay away from the last one because that's yeah.
I want you to be a visionary and a futurist.
So that is not the role I normally play.
All right.
Realist, but let me give it a whirl.
Yeah, please.
I think that we really talked about for a decade this promise of big data, and largely the number of people who are able to benefit from that were pretty small. I know a lot of companies that had at the time a Hadoop cluster or fill in the blank, and there weren't that many people who really got ROI out of it other than, hey, it was a place to store our logs. If I look forward, I think you're going to see that reduction of very senior engineer who knew MapReduce to someone who knew enough Python to do Spark stuff, to someone who I can take a analyst out of college who had an introduction to databases course and make them productive on Snowflake to the next level down. We talk about democratization of data all the time, but I think one of the biggest things, and I think this is going to only continue, is you're going to see this increased access and increased ability to get to answer questions. Yeah. I think that is only going to that is going to change how we do business, because it's going, every company is going to need to be data informed.
I think that's right. And so it's an efficiency play, but it's also kind of making the right decision play at all levels of the organization.
Yeah, I think it's the hardest thing, particularly in young companies, is I come from a startup background, time is the thing you're always struggling against. And yes, you can recover from a bad decision, but it's costly, and being able to reduce the frequency of those, we talked about earlier, it's never going away, but being able to reduce the frequency of them can be really important. And I think that's where you can start seeing this play out.
So we're coming to the end of our podcast, and we typically end on a lighter note, a more personal note. And I understand that you are a bicycling fanatic.
I am.
Yeah. What kind of bikes you got? What kind of riding do you do? Is there any kind of relationship between your work at Weight Watchers and your passion for bicycling?
So yes, I lost 55 pounds at one point. I've been a triathlete for probably 30 years now. I've, at one point through all my startups, definitely gained some weight, lost about 30 pounds on Weight Watchers as I was getting back into shape, going back to compete at nationals and worlds, which I've gotten a chance to do at times. My wife and I compete together. We've done such crazy things as, I think, one of our first Valentine's Day, we went to a wind tunnel to go A/B test our bike positions in the wind tunnel to see which one has the least amount of drag. So yes, my A/B testing and my biking can both kind of play together.
Interesting.
But in a normal weekend, that's kind of what we do, is wake up and, this weekend was about 150 miles through the Hudson Valley and whatnot. But it is where I can kind of turn off and just as meditative as I'll get.
I've had that experience, though I don't go 150 miles. The most I ever went was 82 miles. And at the end, I fell over. So, but no damage done. Well, this has been interesting. I always enjoy the conversations with people whose businesses I just have a sense, they touch me in some way. The product is for regular people. And I think it's been really interesting to talk to you and to see how you're using technology on their behalf. I really enjoyed when you made that distinction between data driven and data informed, because we can be slaves to data. Either, if we don't have enough data, we can't make a decision, or the data seems to be pointing this direction, but hey, wait a second, that doesn't really fit with my worldview. Can we test it? That kind of thing. So I think that was an especially valuable insight that you gave us today. But there were many more. So anyway, thank you so much for being our guest, and good luck with the company.
Thanks so much, Steve. Have a great day.